Right, welcome to Litsoc, everybody. If you've not been before, welcome. It is a special one today because normally we're up on the big chair, and Pooh and Paddington are up there too. We've left them up there. They're minding the fort. And Litsoc happens every Thursday, doesn't it? What time does it start? Usually 4 o'clock. And we have start with tea, don't we, and biscuits, and then we start. So the theme for today is Indiana Jones, hence the hat, okay? It's the wrong sort of hat, actually. Indy wears what's called a fedora, doesn't he? Yeah, a fedora. This is a bit more like an Australian cowboy hat, or sheep rustler hat, sheep herding sheep hat, but it was the best I could do, okay? I didn't want to go out and buy. Fedoras are quite expensive nowadays, okay? Here he is. I'm going to show you a picture before we start. Do you know the name of the actor who plays him? Anybody? Sienna, do you know? You've never seen them?
I can't remember his name, but he's in Star Wars.
He is in Star Wars, you're right. Even the new Star Wars.
He's Han Solo.
He is Han Solo, that's right, yes. And he created the character of Han Solo for George Lucas. In fact, he'd worked with George Lucas before Star Wars in a film called American Graffiti. And he had been a sort of bit part actor for a very long time. He was 38 when he started doing Indiana Jones. I'm not going to spend hours talking about Harrison Ford, but I do like him a lot. I think he's a great actor. He was not doing terribly well, so in order to support himself, like most actors who don't have much work, he became a professional carpenter, a very good one apparently. Anyway, he just happened to meet one day George Lucas, and they were chatting, and they got on very well. And he was cast in this film called American Graffiti. Have you seen that? Have you seen it? Yeah, I love it. Don't see it very often now, do you? Around? No, it's odd. It's a real shame. Anyway, then Star Wars came along, and Han Solo. Who's seen Star Wars? Yes. Hello, Mr. Webb. We know you have. Yes. The original. Have you seen the original Star Wars?
Yeah.
Yes.
My dad probably forced me to watch it.
Okay. Well, he was right from the get-go. He was a great character. He was cynical. He was out. He was a rebel. He only seemed to care about money. Certainly in the first one. And poor old Luke had a horrible time with him. And he kept calling. Do you remember what he kept calling Princess Leia? You remember as Han Solo? You remember, Mr. Humphreys?
Did he just sarcastically?
He was very sarcastic. Yeah. Yes, your worship. Yes, your worship. Which, and then they all get stuck in the... Do you remember they get stuck in the compressor?
Yes.
One thing's for certain, we're all going to be a lot thinner.
Yes.
A great wit. And a lot of the work on Han Solo was from his own personality, which, funnily enough, does not come over terribly well in interviews. Never. I had a friend at school who I've still got a friend with. She absolutely adored him as Han Solo, but we all agreed watching him in an interview was really boring. But it's actually not his real personality. Anyway, so George Lucas had an idea bubbling around in his head for years. He was a great movie fan. He'd been to the cinema as a little boy of sort of 5 upwards, because in the days when he was growing up, he's slightly older than me. I think he's in his 70s now. And you used to have Saturday morning cinema, and you went to the cinema and you were there all morning, and that was sort of where your parents left you, and you watched series. So give me a series that you're watching on TV, Evie.
Well, I'm watching this series called Millie in Between, which is all about this girl whose parents have been divorced and everything's changing. Her dad's got a partner who's already got some kids, and so has her mum, and she has a big sister called Lauren, and they've experienced it together, and it's crazy, but it's also really funny because the different personalities of the mum, who's very organised, and with dad, who's kind of a bit like kind of doesn't really mind what anyone does. Just
Okay.
basically just wants to play on a toy guitar.
Oh, okay. Now, is it? Do the episodes finish and then is a new episode, or does it Does it go through a story of a series?
It almost goes through the story, but the episodes are all about different things. It's like in one series, one of the adult characters is pregnant, and that continues through the whole series.
Right. So there are certain threads then.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the sort of serials, because that's what they were called, the serials that George Lucas and also his great friend Steven Spielberg used to watch, were sort of little short. So they might be about 20 minutes, half an hour at a time, and they'd be adventurous. There'd be lots of action, running around, thievery, roguery, young boys helping adults. There was a series called Buck Rogers, which was all set in space, and again it was lots of action, and it would always finish on a cliffhanger. Always on a cliffhanger. What's a cliffhanger?
Like, you don't know what's going to happen.
You don't know what's going to happen next, but also it's a really dangerous situation. Okay, more often than not, the hero will be left hanging from a rock or a rope, or be about to blowing up, or about the car about to fall over the cliff, and you never know whether they get back from it until next week. You had to wait. And so there'll be two or three of these, and there'll be things like about horses, Lassie. Anybody ever seen a Lassie movie? Sophie, you've seen a Lassie movie? Oh, okay. All right. Lassie is what?
A dog.
A dog. What type of dog? Do you know?
Like, no.
It's a border collie. It's a border collie. A long-haired border collie. Lassie's helps things. And then there's also series that we watched when I was at school called Champion the Wonder Horse. You've heard of Champion the Wonder Horse? Did you watch this, Mr. Humphrey?
No.
No? We had Champion the Wonder Horse, and Champion was a brilliant horse. He could do anything. He belonged to a cowboy. I don't remember what the cowboy's name is. I wasn't interested in the cowboy. I was interested in Champion, and he virtually talked, okay? So all these things went into the mix to produce Indiana Jones. So I'm going to play you, this is the theatrical trailer of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which came out in 1981, okay? Now, I was in my last year at university. I don't remember going to see it. I can remember going to see Star Wars, which I was at sixth form, and I can remember going to see Alien and Aliens later, but I do not remember going to see Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it might have been that I didn't see it at university. Maybe I saw it in the holidays. I don't remember much about holidays so much. That's the production company, Lucasfilm. They produced Star Wars as well.
For nearly 3,000 years, man has searched for the lost Ark of the Covenant.
The Bible speaks of the Ark leveling mountains and laying waste to entire regions. Not something to be taken lightly. No one knows its secrets.
Jones, do you realize what the Ark is? It's a transmitter. It's a radio for speaking to God.
An army which carries the Ark before it is invincible.
The Ark. It is their Atanis. And it is something that man was not meant to disturb.
It is protected by forces beyond imagination. It is desired above all treasures on earth by those who are good, trustworthy, and those who are evil.
Tell me everything. Yes, I know you will.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
There we go.
We have no time. We still want the Ark. It has been loaded onto a truck for Cairo.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. A film from Steven Spielberg and George Lucas.
now? Do you recognise the music? Yes? I'm sure you do. Yes? Dun, da, 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 da. And that, of course, is the iconic theme tune, and it's by John Williams. Now, yes?
I think I've seen that film a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, excellent. I think it probably was on the last bit of the holiday. Yeah, yeah. The way that they presented it is very similar to the series. What did you notice about it?
A lot of action.
A lot of action, yes, yes, a lot of action. A lot of what? What else? How was it action, Evie?
There was lots of fighting, lots of tense moments, lots of like running away or chasing.
Yeah, Indy's always being chased, okay? He's always either chasing somebody or he's being chased. He's quite hapless, actually. And the reason for this is because he's not really what he appears to be. He's not an action hero, is he? He's actually an academic. He's a teacher, like me. He is an archaeology teacher. Anybody know what archaeology is? Sophie?
Like, kind of digging up, like, things.
Yes,
Like
anything.
artifacts.
Could be treasure, artifacts. I was watching a programme on BBC about the history of archaeology last week, which went very well with this. Richard Miles was saying that there was a point in the 1950s where it became about ordinary people, not about treasure anymore, just about the way that ordinary people lived. And we still do dig up treasure. We're constantly finding hoards of silver across Britain because people have saved them when they were being chased by the Vikings or the Romans, and but also ordinary people too. So this is playing into this, and so George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and Philip Kaufman, who wrote the script of a lot of the films, are sort of trying to conjure up a spirit of adventure. And also it's very black and white about good and evil. Okay, the baddies. Anybody work out who the baddies were?
That guy who was like.
That guy who was.
He was like, I couldn't quite see, but he was.
He's got glasses. Yes.
Yeah, he's got the glasses. He's got the bowler hat. He was. I think he was bald. I'm not too sure. But.
Emily.
I'm thinking of like a fire or something like really bright red. I'm not sure what was like something he was creating something maybe, or like a gemstone that he boiled, or like iron.
Not sure about that, but basically the Germans are bad. All the Germans were in the truck. Yes, and Indy and his pals are good. Okay, and he has pals across the world. All right. Marion, who is his girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend, and then he visits her again, lives in Nepal at the top of the Himalayas. And considering that they filmed all this in Hertfordshire, not far from where Harry Potter is exhibited now, in fact on the Harry Potter sound stages, I think, didn't they? And Elstree, it really feels like Nepal. It feels like it's at the end of the earth. He gets there, a great big shadow suddenly appears. Indy's arrived, and she's now Marion's a great girl. Now he's an action hero, but he's a bit hapless because he's also an academic. Really, he belongs in the classroom. He's surrounded in the classroom by adoring women who would take his 101 course, archaeology 101. Do you know about 101 courses, girls? No? Say, Anna?
Is it like an introduction?
It's an introduction, yes. Archaeology 101, English 101, that gives you the full panoply of everything to do with that subject, and then you go on to specialise later. So all the girls are just sitting there like this. Do you remember Miss Rio? They're all going,
she wrote something on her eyelids.
She wrote something on her eyelids, doesn't she? Yes. She go,
Doesn't she write I love you on her eyelids and then she blinks and it?
I love you. She blinks and she
something like that.
And he goes, got no idea. He's only interested in artefacts, and he's got a great friend who we saw on the screen, played by a wonderful actor called Denham Elliott, who's British. A lot of the actors were British or Welsh or Scottish because they filmed here, and it's too complicated in terms of employment law to get them over, American actors over, unless they're a big star. Okay, and his great friend is Mr. Brophy, Marcus Brodie, who runs the college. He's the dean of the college that Indy works at, and he runs the museum that Indy brings back artifacts for. Okay. Now, Indy's been doing this since he was a child. We don't know this when Raiders of the Lost Ark first appeared, but because of all sorts of fanzines and comic books that came out of it, because George Lucas was a great merchandiser, Star Wars was the first film to have proper merchandise, i.e. models, sweatshirts, T-shirts, posters. Lots and lots of other merchandise was created for films, but they weren't like Star Wars, where he controlled it all. And that was one of the problems with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Lucas wanted to control everything. And the studio said, no, we want more cut of the profits. And he said, no, I want, this is what I want. He was already very successful with Star Wars, and he got his way in the end. It was going to cost a lot of money. Anyway, so they went on after the success of this film and after the success of 2 or 3 others to create a prequel. And the prequel was called Young Indiana Jones. And you had a series of adventures with young Indiana and sometimes his father across America. And he got involved in historical events before he grew up. And in fact, this is referred to in the 3rd film, Indiana Jones and the Lost Crusade. And in that film, you see him with his father, who's not much older than Harrison Ford. And he was played by Sean Connery. Sean Connery had been the original James Bond. And of course, this was the idea with Raiders of the Lost Ark, that it would rival James Bond. And in fact, it's a bigger franchise now, isn't it, than James Bond, I would say. Probably
hard to say, really.
Well,
they're both big franchises.
They're both big franchises. Not as many Indiana Jones films as with James Bond, but certainly in terms of action, it's incredibly expensive to do. There are the most amazing stunts because Indy always gets himself into trouble. He's in exotic locations. He's being chased by Indians or indigenous people. Boulders, yes. The boulder cost a huge amount of money, apparently. Huge amount of money to create. This also makes it very good as a video game. So they merchandise those, develop those, and also theme rides as well. But the humour that went with Han Solo in Star Wars continues with Indy. He's got his iconic things. He's got his hat. He's also got... Anything else did you notice that he'd got?
His whip.
His whip, absolutely, his whip. And of course there's a very funny scene in Raiders where a gentleman arrives with an enormous sword. And what does he do, Mr. Humphreys?
He shoots him.
He shoots him rather than, taking him on with a... Yeah,
it's
I'm
a very,
taking him.
very famous
Very, very famous scene.
Don't bring a sword to a gunfight.
That's right, absolutely. Don't bring a sword to a gunfight. Yes.
Perhaps you could find the clip or something. It's very funny.
That's right, I will find it. And the other thing is that Indy's got a pet hate. He's got a pet hate. Anybody know what it might be?
Why did it have to be... You find them... Well, actually, you don't find them where he finds them. Everyone really dislikes them. They're really horrible. And when he sees them, he's like, why did it have to be... They begin and end with an S. Plural. Snakes?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's absolutely paranoid about snakes. And there's a moment in Raiders of the Lost Ark where, in fact, right at the beginning, when he's running away from the Amazonian people, he gets into a plane and there's a snake in there. There's a snake in the cockpit. There's a snake. Yes, indeed. It's the jungle. Of course there's a snake. Anyway, that thread continues. And in the Well of the Souls, again, done in Tunisia, Indy falls into a pit full of snakes.
Open an account and get at least 10% off for life with the rewards program from Booking.com.
Right, this is the fight. The people in the black heads here are the baddies. They're on the side of the Nazis. With a French archaeologist. How that works, God only knows.
Right.
Now, we've got two little in-jokes there. What does she hit him with? Frying pan. Who hits him with it? What gender is she?
Female.
Female. Okay. So, see where we're going? Now she's got into what? What is that basket that she's just got into? What's it normally used for? Any ideas?
Is it grain or something?
No, not grain. No.
It's like a wicker basket.
It's a wicker basket.
In a wicker basket,
You might not have. Mine at home is now stainless steel, but I used to have wicker baskets for this in the bathroom.
And put your clothes in it?
You put your dirty clothes in it. It's a laundry basket, okay? So Lucas and Spielberg are having a little dig at the gender roles to do with females, normally in the 1930s versions of this sort of film, okay? Marion looks pretty helpless, but she isn't actually. She's, they're playing up to the stereotype of fainting woman, got to be rescued. And of course he said, just go away, hasn't he? She can use a gun with the best of them, and she can certainly drink an awful lot of people under the table, which is the first scene we see her in. She's drunk a great big hulking giant of a Chinese person into, in fact, not even Mongolian possibly, isn't he? Under the table, and she's still standing. That's, to be that age again. Anyway, so here we are. She's in the laundry basket, okay, and we've just seen a little animal.
A monkey.
A monkey, okay. Monkeys make lovely pets, but they're not to be trusted.
Never.
See? When you're in hiding, don't trust a monkey. No, it's hideous, but very funny. So they're playing with the stereotypes. That sword is enormous. Ordinarily you'd have to be, really, really fit and incredibly agile to use it. Tiana.
About the frying pan? It's like tangled. Rapunzel does that.
Yes, they've got the idea from this film. Okay. And so it goes on. Emily.
And the monkey's like the one in Aladdin.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. She's befriended the monkey, and in fact, actually, the monkey gets his comeuppance, doesn't he? There's also all the way through there's tension because there's sort of signals and signs, and there's one moment where after this scene, Marion appears, she's kidnapped, and then there's an explosion in the truck, and she appears to be dead, and the Indy's very upset, and his friend Salah is very upset, who's played by John Rhys-Davies. If you've seen Lord of the Rings, John Rhys-Davies plays Gimli, although he's 6 foot. In this, he's an Egyptian helper who looks after Indy all the time. Anyway, they bring the monkey to the terrace where Salah lives, and what they don't realise is that they're all still being hunted, chased by these people, by the Nazis, and eventually the monkey ends up dead, having eaten poisoned dates. Yes, I know, Emily, it's sad. But he did betray Marion, so, it's quite obvious what he did.
But also, he did save Indiana's life because he was going to eat the day, and then
That's true.
then he saw the
That's right.
monkey.
Indiana was going to.
I
Was
mean,
going
it was
to.
either the monkey or
Yeah.
it was
Okay.
Indiana,
That's
so-
right. It's a bit sad, really.
What kind of film series would it be, though?
Well, this is true.
Just about the monkey.
If it's just about the monkey, exactly. So it goes on, and it was an absolute phenomenon, and therefore they went on to make more and more. So the sequel, or actually the next one, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, I hadn't realised this until today when I started doing my research, is a prequel. It's much darker. It's set in India. Even though it wasn't filmed there, a lot of it was filmed, I think, in Sri Lanka. It doesn't have Marion in it. It has a nightclub singer who seems to have got involved with, and a little Chinese boy, and they're on a short.
That's his name. Short Round.
Short Round. That's right. Who's quite cute, but never explained as to how he's ended up with them, does he?
He just happens to be his
He just
sidekick.
happens to be his sidekick. Yeah, his
Okay.
buddy. That's right. He always needs a buddy. Anyway, they're on a plane, and the plane is being flown by a Chinese person again, and basically he jumps out and the plane's about to crash. Again, for some reason, Indy is about to be killed. This time I'm not quite sure. Sienna?
Does the buddy survive?
Yes, they all survive. They end up in the life raft of the plane. It's a very small plane. Going down the mountains on the snow, and then of course they end up in the river and the rapids. Okay, it's a bit like the Magnificent Seven, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, only much darker. Do you think? Rescuing.
Well, yeah, when this main storyline.
Main storyline starts. Yeah,
What they come
yeah.
across. Yes. Very
Needless to say, they are utterly convoluted, and I couldn't possibly summarise all the films in any great detail because there are always bits I've forgotten.
The most famous scene from that was probably the rope bridge, isn't it?
The rope bridge, yes, the rope bridge, and there's the running joke again, isn't there? With the
snakes,
not the snakes, the sword. The guy isn't there a guy with a sword at the end of the?
I can't remember.
I can't remember either. Anyway.
Yeah.
You might wonder why on earth does he keep getting involved with people who are running after him? Well, of course, he is a thief. There is no getting away from this. Indiana Jones is a thief. Has this ever occurred to you girls?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
I watched the film.
You watched the film? Yeah? He steals he steals quite precious artefacts. It's like, in some ways, it's like going into the British Museum, knocking on the door and saying, "Hi, I'd like so-and-so. I'm just going to run off with it now." Which does happen in Doctor Who. Not Doctor Who, Sherlock. Sherlock, yes. Yes, it's like going and getting the Rosetta Stone out of the British Museum. Going to the cave in the Amazon with all the terrible traps and things. He takes the sand and he puts it on the plaque at the stone, and when he takes the monkey god, you see the monkey god, and then the monkey god pursues him in the native peoples. Okay, but he is a thief, and if you look at them from the 21st century perspective, which is why I'm doing this, it's saying something about America. It's saying something about museums across the world. Should you really be taking artefacts that are still sacred, that mean a lot to people? Most of this happened in the 19th century, but it still continues today. And, you know, it's very exciting to watch Raiders. Don't get me wrong, I love the films. But it's taking things that are precious and putting them behind glass cases. And should we be doing that?
It's quite problematic.
Sienna?
It's quite problematic.
It is quite problematic, yes, absolutely. Neil McGregor, who used to be director of the British Museum and now is in Berlin, his view is, things may change, that in Berlin, the Louvre, the British Museum, the Metropolitan in New York, the world comes there rather than having to go trekking into the Arctic wastes or the jungles. But, of course, there are lots of people who say, well, we want our people back. For example, in the British Museum, we've got an enormous, great Easter Island, enormous, great thing. just like in what's it called?
Oh, Night at the Museum.
Night at the Museum, yes. And of course, Night at the Museum is very funny, but and sad too. But it's it's not necessarily the right thing to do. And so museums are starting to think about should we be doing this? However, it doesn't take away from the fun. But there is a truth behind Raiders of the Lost Ark as well, because Indiana Jones, theoretically on the side of the angels, he's American, and he's up against a French archaeologist who's played by an Englishman, would you believe, called Paul Freeman. Quite often Paul Freeman turns up from time to time. He's quite a very good character actor. Endeavour, Morse, all you name it, he's been in it. And he's on the side of the Germans. Now, this was true. Hitler was looking to find evidence that the Germans, or the Aryan race, because of his belief in racial purity, absolute nonsense, was true. So he sent archaeologists out across the world, mostly into the Norse countries, into Sweden, Denmark, Norway when he occupied them, and a lot of archaeology was done in a very strange sort of theoretical meaning. Richard Mars looks at this in this archaeology series I was telling you about, and they found markings, they found evidence in their view that yes, the Aryan race was superior, but which is just a theory, it's absolute nonsense. But in Raiders of the Lost Ark, they go to Egypt, and Egypt, of course, is ancient, really ancient civilization, looked at by Napoleon's archaeologists. What country is Napoleon from? France, yes, emperor. Okay, he was taking on the might of the British Empire, fighting Nelson at the Battle of the Nile, and part of that, E. Nesbit tells it very, very vividly in the tale of the amulet, and the amulet speaks to the children and tells them, behind soldiers came people looking for the past, and they found it. That's why we've got quite a lot of artefacts here, because behind the French came the British. After the British came Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they're looking for the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant is a very sacred artefact to do with the Jewish faith. Okay, you saw it. It's a big box, and on the top are statues like angels' wings like this. There are two of them. And it was the box that was carried before the Israelites as they journeyed through the desert. Where did they leave? Can you remember? Anybody remember the story? This is the Prince of Egypt story. Moses? No?
Was it, I don't quite remember, I think it was Cairo to...
They took 40 years to get there, which is impossible, but that's the story.
Was it...
They left Egypt. Where did they end up? Where did the Jews end up? Where do they live now? Israel. Yeah, Israel. So they left, the idea was they left Egypt after the plagues. Do you remember the plagues? Yes? Frogs, red rain, blood, the death of the firstborn. That's when Pharaoh let them go. They left, parting of the Red Sea. Does this all sound familiar? Yeah, so we've got this magical, sort of mystical mystery of God going before them. And the Ark of the Covenant eventually carried the Ten Commandments on the stones. That was the belief, okay? Now, what's also interesting about this film is that you've heard Paul Freeman, the archaeologist in the white hat, talking about the power, the limitless power, that you could talk to God from this. It's a radio receiver. Now, of course, in the 1930s, radio was the great thing, as well as the movies. People had radios all over the world. You could sit in a kitchen in Manchester and talk to somebody across the sea in the United States. It was phenomenal. People were just ecstatic about this shortwave radio. That's their idea. They can talk to God. It's really powerful. Okay. The funny thing is, though, they were in the wrong place. They found it in the film, but in reality, it's supposedly in Ethiopia. There is a very special chapel. Michael Wood, who has considerable resemblance to Indiana Jones as a historian who wears a flying jacket, leather jacket and a blue scarf, not quite the hat, he was on television in a lot in my childhood. He's now Professor of Communication of History at Manchester. Most of my history came from him. He's been to the chapel. You can't go in, but the idea is that the Ark of the Covenant is there, because the Ten Commandments are really special, okay? So that's what dominates Raiders of the Lost Ark, okay? The trouble is, Indy finds it in the Well of the Lost Souls, with this map and this staff and this artefact, this amazing artefact. They steal it, and then he has to get it back. The trouble is, if he hadn't found it in the first place, we wouldn't have any of this problem. So it's all rather hapless, as my lovely word goes. Okay. Anyway, yes, Evie.
I was just thinking because obviously the design of it has the angels. I was just thinking because like you're not allowed inside the chapel, would the chapel be almost like the one in his Dark Materials, like the TV show where it's the tall one with the angel and like,
they sort of got all these things would be in Philip Pullman's mind. Yes, absolutely. Most of his iconography comes from Paradise Lost, but yes, and the Bible. Yes, definitely. Emily.
So basically, Indiana Jones is the good guy, but
He is the good
bad
guy.
guy at the same time, stealing, and the other side are also bad. Basically, it's the baddish good side against the bad side.
Yes, yes. He's not in the films. You just have to suspend your disbelief. You know, remember I told you talking usually about Shakespeare. You have to suspend your disbelief. You have to go along with it. Otherwise, you can't watch them. I love them, and I was a student at the time. So really, I should. And I suppose in some ways I did realise. It's just over the years I've been reading. And you do. The older I get, and the people I've read who are American. We tend to think of because they think of it themselves, America, as freedom loving. They're not really. They're very much less free than we are, for various reasons, which you'll find out if you study politics. And they also are very imperialistic in a way that we stopped being. When would you say 60s? Yeah. They were still fighting wars abroad until very recently. Afghanistan is over now. I mean, we're trying to help, obviously, a bit more. But they've still got, for example, in the South Pacific, they've still got islands filled with American soldiers. They've still got occupy a lot of the Philippines, don't they? That's seen really as the 52nd state in some ways. And so they're not without controversy. And this. So a lot of the films, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, which is another one about Hitler's search for artifacts. In the Last Crusade, it's about the Holy Grail. If I say the Holy Grail, do you know what I mean?
That like the one in King Arthur.
The one in King Arthur. It's the chalice, and a wonderful knight, an actor that I actually worked with very, very long time ago, quite an elderly man in the film. He has all these chalices, and they have to choose which one. It's magical because it's the cup that Christ had at the Last Supper, and they have to go through all these terrible things to get there. A real series of choices, and the trail leads from Venice all the way to the Middle East, Petra, which is a real place. You can go there. Let's have a look at a.
Switch to Google Pixel with a studio quality camera. Switch from pretty good photos to stunning photos in low light. So you can even capture crystal clear shots of the stars. Switch to Google Pixel from £349.
I don't think so.
That's a lot, isn't it?
We're about to complete a great quest for the Holy Grail.
Dr. Jones. Oh, rats. This is it.
It's rats this time, not snakes.
The shield is the second mark.
Can you see?
We found it.
Try this.
Indiana Jones is on the quest of a lifetime. But for some adventurers, one Jones is not enough. Dad? Junior? Don't call me that, please. Follow me! Another way! A race across 3 continents.
And in this sort of race, there's no silver medal for finishing second.
Hang on, Dad, we're going! Into the homeland of the enemy.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
Our situation has not improved.
In his search for the Holy Grail.
How dare you kiss me?
Are you crazy? Don't go between them!
Go between them, are you crazy?
Where's my father? In the belly of that steel beast.
Dad! Junior!
You call this archaeology? The quest for the Grail is not archaeology. It's a race against evil.
Germany has declared war on the Jones boys.
Those people are trying to kill us.
I know, Dad!
This is a new experience for me.
Happens to me all the time. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Have the adventure of your life. Keeping up with the Joneses.
So Keeping Up with the Joneses was the strap line, and as I said before, Sean Connery plays Dad, and Indy is demoted to Junior. And we discover in this film that his nickname, Indiana, is nothing to do where he was brought up. He's named after the dog. The dog. Can you imagine it? No, they're completely unfazed. Imagine calling a boy after the dog.
Imagine if you were named after your parents' dog.
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
would you feel about that?
I'd be called George.
Well, there we are then,
Best
Sophie,
name.
see? Okay, so he doesn't like... He's Henry Jones Jr. So he is Henry Jones Jr. or Henry Jones II. Henry Jones is played by Sean Connery. And they end up... Dad's been kidnapped and because of his diary, and he's on this quest for the Holy Grail, this artifact that will give immortality. That's what everybody thinks. That's what the Nazis want. They want ultimate power again. We're going to live forever. Hitler wants to live forever, which he did. So they're up against the bad guys again. So it's good against evil. But in fact, actually, what happens, plot spoiler here, they defeat the Germans, the Nazis, but his father is very, very badly injured. And so they have to try and get the Grail in order to heal him, because that's the idea, that it's a healing myth. And this goes right back to the original legends from King Arthur that were written down in the 14th and 15th century by the Welsh and Breton poets. And it's absolutely extraordinary to think that a 20th and 21st century film is tapping into these medieval legends from so long ago. And the Grail, in the Grail Castle, is guarded by the Fisher King. Now, the Fisher King, again, an iconic myth that keeps coming up in English literature. T.S. Eliot wrote about it in The Wasteland. He is very badly wounded. He has a wound in his thigh, and so the land around the castle is a wasteland. And of course, they're taking this when Henry, played by Sean Connery, is very, very badly wounded. So they do manage to get the cup. They heal him, it heals him, and everybody survives. But the cup has to pass back. And so the knight that was hoping, he's been waiting to have his vigil, if you like, taken by somebody else. There were 3 of them, and now there's only him. He can't cross the line, he would die. They can get the cup, but they can't cross to be with him. And so it's very sad in lots of ways. They leave him in this rose-red city, half as old as time, Petra. You can visit it. It's in Jordan. It's absolutely gorgeous. Mrs. Davis from In Learning Enrichment's been there, followed all the way by George W. Bush. He was on the same tour. Anyway, so, and then they leave that behind and go back to adventures. And then there is another film, The Crystal Skulls, and that taps into the American obsession with aliens. Crystal skulls were artifacts. They're fake, but they were believed to be made by a Mayan civilization. Yeah, it's fine. This is also a film where Indy meets his own son by Marion. Marion comes back into the frame, and we end with the wedding, so all ends happily. So although I have reservations about Indy now that I am as old as I am, nonetheless he's still a great adventurer. He's witty, he's very fit, he's very active, for the age he is, and he's a great sport. They're an up and down ride, and if you like action adventure, I really do recommend them. And we have got the DVDs, haven't we? They're always on the television in one form or another. But Raiders is definitely the best by a long chalk, and then followed by The Last Crusade. We are expecting another one. It's in the can. They were filming this summer here in Britain after restrictions were lifted. Harrison is playing Indiana again. They've said that they can't think who else could play it. It's really his part. We're hoping for something wonderful. We've got the new James Bond imminently, and then next year will be Indy again. So I hope that I've enlightened you a bit about the stories and things. But he's great fun. I would suggest you watch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miss Adam.